Welcome to Lifespan, the weekly podcast that digs up the dirt on the most outrageous, chaotic, and downright WTF lives ever lived. Forget what you learned in school. This is history's unhinged side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today, we are embarking on a truly bizarre journey into the true story of Spartacus.
And look, forget Kirk Douglas for a moment, okay?
Okay.
What we're talking about here is the wild, bloody, genuinely WTF reality of a gladiator who became the Roman Republic's absolute worst nightmare.
Totally. We've got testimonies describing like prison breaks with kitchen knives, rappelling down volcanoes. It's insane.
And armies of ex-slaves just repeatedly crushing supposedly invincible Roman legions time after time.
And that ending.
Oh.
Let's not forget the brutal finale. It left this lasting scar of terror on Rome.
You got to picture 73 BC Rome. It's this republic just flaunting its power, its wealth.
Right.
But it's all built on this enormous foundation of enslaved people.
Yep.
And beneath that shiny surface, discontent was seriously brewing.
Their whole expansion, fueled by slave labor, kind of set them up for this, didn't it?
Right.
Created this huge, resentful group right in their midst.
Exactly. It highlights this inherent instability, in empires built like that.
And then from this gladiator school in Capua, which sounds more like a high-security prison where guys were trained to kill for sport,
Yeah, pretty much.
a spark just ignites the whole thing, the Third Servile War.
And look, they'd seen slave revolts before, but this one, this was different, crucially different,
I'll say.
because it was on Italian soil, ripping right through the heartland. And it was led by someone who was just, well, both brilliant and terrifyingly unstoppable.
So for 2 years, Rome faced this, like, existential threat. The unthinkable seemed genuinely possible. The enslaved might actually win.
And the name, everyone was whispering, in fear, in disbelief, Spartacus.
So today's bizarre journey with Lifespan podcast dives deep into the WTF true story of Spartacus. Gladiator, rebel, nightmare of Rome.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Who the hell was Spartacus, actually? It's surprisingly hard to pin down his exact origins.
It really is. Our only real sources are, ancient Roman writers. And let's be honest, they weren't exactly writing objective biographies.
No kidding. Biased is probably putting it mildly.
But they do tend to agree on one key thing. He was Thracian, from that region in southeastern Europe known for its fierce warriors, modern Bulgaria, parts of Greece, Turkey, that area.
Plutarch called him a Thracian of nomadic stock, though I heard there's some debate. Maybe Madic stock.
Yeah, some scholars lean towards Madic, linking him to a specific tribe near the Strymon Valley. Then you've got Appian and Florus, who suggest maybe he was a Thracian auxiliary soldier first.
A soldier for Rome, who then deserted.
Right, deserted, became a bandit maybe, got captured, and then enslaved. It's quite a path, if true.
So that idea, him possibly having military experience before the gladiator school, feels pretty significant, right?
Oh, absolutely crucial. And there's even speculation, whispers in the sources that he might have had noble blood, born free.
Which would make being enslaved even more degrading, fueling the fire later.
Exactly. Even the name Spartacus, it echoes names of kings from the Black Sea region. One historian even throws out the idea the Romans gave him that name mockingly.
Seriously. To humiliate him. Like, oh, look, the king is a slave now.
Something like that, yeah. Referencing some old Thracian prince. It's a theory, but it fits the Roman attitude, doesn't it?
It really does. That's, wow. But okay, noble or not, former soldier or not, that potential military background seems key. How else do you explain him going from, well, an enslaved entertainer to a rebel general, beating Roman legions?
You hit it right there. It's the most logical bridge, isn't it? Explaining the tactical thinking, the logistics, moving and feeding an army, the leadership. Without that piece, his later success seems almost magical. Unbelievable.
And then there's the spooky stuff. Plutarch loves a good story.
He does indeed.
Tells this really weird tale about an omen. A snake.
Yeah, the snake coiled around his face while he slept. Supposedly, when he first arrived in Italy, or maybe in Capua, these kinds of omens, you see them a lot in ancient writing.
To explain big events, or make the person seem destined for greatness or doom.
Exactly. And it ties into his wife. Apparently, he had one. Also Thracian, also enslaved.
Okay, didn't know that.
Plutarch describes her as a prophetess, prone to these bacchanal frenzy, wild religious states.
Right.
And she supposedly interpreted the snake, said it meant great and formidable power for Spartacus, but also an unfortunate end.
Talk about foreshadowing. Heavy stuff. But you gotta wonder, was that real? or something the Romans cooked up later?
That's the million denarius question, isn't it? Was it a real event or a way for Rome to make their adversaries seem more significant? We weren't beaten by just some random slave.
Elevates their own struggle in a way.
Precisely. And it's telling that Appian, who's often seen as a bit more straightforward, military focused,
Yeah.
he doesn't mention the wife or the prophecy at all.
Huh. So that silence kind of highlights the gaps, the biases in our sources. Plutarch going for drama, Appian for maybe just the facts as he saw them.
It really does. You see how different writers focus on different things. And of course, modern takes, like the Starz TV show, they grabbed onto that wife prophecy angle and ran with it. Made her a huge part of the story.
Right, makes sense for drama. Okay, so this Thracian enigma, maybe noble, maybe ex-soldier, maybe marked by snake omens, he ends up in the absolute pits. A gladiator school, a ludus near Capua, owned by Batiatus, or Vitia.
Yeah, the name's a bit fuzzy, and Noah's Cornelius Lentulus Batiatus is what Plutarch gives us, but scholars think Batiatus might just be a mess-up of Vitia, maybe linking him to a known political family.
Interesting. But whatever his name, these schools, women need to ditch the movie image, right? This wasn't Russell Crowe getting cheered on.
Oh, absolutely not. Forget the romance. These ludius were basically high-security prisons mixed with incredibly brutal training camps. Batiatus's place, by all accounts, was particularly nasty. He was making money off death.
So what was daily life like inside? Just hell.
Pretty much. Think prisoners of war, criminals, slaves, bought cheap specifically for the arena, human commodities, basically, forced into the savage business of killing each other for Roman entertainment.
And the discipline.
Relentless. Beatings were common, conditions were cramped, heavily guarded, the training was punishing, nonstop. Maybe a tiny few hoped for fame, became celebrity gladiators, but for most, like Spartacus, it was just a death sentence waiting to happen.
Even Seneca, the philosopher, wrote about how badly slaves were treated later on, didn't he? Suggested it wasn't just Batiatus being cruel.
Yeah, Seneca had some surprisingly modern-sounding thoughts, reminding people slaves were fundamentally the same, breathed the same air, but that was very much a minority view back then. The standard thinking was you had to break a slave's will to control them.
But here's the massive irony, isn't it? The system designed to crush these men. It actually created the perfect conditions for rebellion.
Exactly. It's completely counterintuitive, but true. These schools gathered large numbers of incredibly strong, skilled fighters. Men trained to kill, hardened by brutality every single day.
The physical training built them up, but the abuse, that must have fostered this deep resentment, right? A desire for revenge, maybe even a kind of recklessness. Nothing left to lose.
Absolutely. And think about the bonds forged in that shared suffering. Guys from totally different backgrounds. Thracians like Spartacus, Gauls like Crixus, Germans like Ennomus thrown together in this pressure cooker. They must have developed this intense camaraderie.
So the Romans, trying to create entertainment, accidentally created the leadership and the shock troops for their worst nightmare. You couldn't write it better.
It's incredible, really. Which leads us straight to the spring of 73 BC. That simmering pot in Batiatus's ludus, it boils over.
Spartacus and about 200 others, mostly Thracians and Gauls, they decide, enough, plan a mass escape.
But like you said, word leaks out. A traitor. Someone informs the guards.
And discovery means torture, execution. No second chances.
So Spartacus and a smaller core group, maybe 70, 78 guys, they have to move now. Immediately.
And this is where the kitchen knives come in. It sounds unbelievable.
It does, but that's what the sources say. Their first weapons, kitchen stuff. They stormed the cookhouse, grabbed meat cleavers, knives, roasting spits. Imagine that scene. Highly trained killers, pure desperation, armed with pots and pans, basically. Overwhelming armed guards.
It's chaos, just pure adrenaline and desperation.
Utter chaos. And then this incredible stroke of luck. As they're fighting their way out, or just after, they stumble upon wagons. Wagons carrying gladiatorial weapons and armor.
No way. Just sitting there.
Apparently being transported nearby. Suddenly, they're not just desperate guys with kitchen tools. They're armed. Properly armed.
Okay, now they're dangerous.
And they immediately prove it. They run into some local soldiers sent from Capua to round them up. They just rout them, seize even more military gear.
And they need a safe place to regroup, right? Where do they go?
Up onto the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, that big dormant volcano overlooking the whole area, a defensible position.
And as there they start to organize, elect leaders.
Seems so. The sources mention 3 main leaders elected early on, likely representing the big groups among the escapees. Spartacus, the Thracian, Crixus, the Gaul, and Ennomus, another Gaul or maybe German.
And Spartacus's wife, the prophetess, she made it out too.
Yes, Plutarch says she was among those who escaped to the mountain. So this initial breakout, even though it's small scale, it reveals so much, doesn't it?
Yeah, the desperation, the audacity, the improvisation, the sheer luck with the weapons, and that immediate success against Roman soldiers.
It really sets the tone, shows they're willing to take insane risks, grab any opportunity, and it completely shatters Roman assumptions about how slaves are supposed to act. This wasn't just running away, this was fighting back, effectively.
Okay, so a band of escaped gladiators is now holed up on Mount Vesuvius. What's Rome's next move? Did they freak out immediately, send the legions?
Not quite. Rome's initial reaction was more dismissal, almost arrogance. They saw it as a local problem, some bandits causing trouble, not a full-blown war.
So no legions yet.
No legions. They sent down a praetor, Gaius Claudius Glaber. A praetor was a magistrate, yeah, but he only had a militia. About 3,000 men, hastily gathered, not the seasoned professional soldiers.
And Glaber, he just assumes he can handle these runaway slaves.
Totally. He gets down there, sees they're on Vesuvius, and doesn't even try a direct assault. He just blocks the one known path down the mountain.
His plan was just wait them out, starve them.
Yep. Standard Roman siege tactic 101, blockade and wait. But it was lazy thinking. He completely underestimated who he was dealing with, and he ignored the terrain.
Ah, the terrain. Vesuvius wasn't just a smooth cone, right? Lots of cliffs, wild vines.
Exactly. Steep, rugged cliffs on the other sides, covered in these thick, wild grapevines. And Spartacus looks at those vines, looks at the cliffs the Romans aren't guarding, and gets a brilliant idea.
This is the vine ladder part. It sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. He ordered his men, cut the strongest vines, weave them into long, sturdy ladders, then, under the cover of darkness,
They rappelled down off the cliffs.
The whole force. Down the sheer cliff face the Romans thought was impassable. Plutarch even adds this detail about one guy staying behind to lower all the weapons down before climbing down himself. Incredible discipline and teamwork.
That's amazing. That completely bypasses Glaber's blockade. He wouldn't have seen it coming.
Not a chance. They get to the bottom, quietly circle around the base of the mountain, and hit the Roman camp from the rear. Total surprise.
Glaber's militia must have panicked.
Utterly wiped out. Annihilated. The historian Frontinus specifically mentions the terror it caused the Roman commander. It's possible Ennomus, one of the three leaders, died in this fight. Sources are a bit unclear.
The Vesuvius escape. It wasn't just clever. It was a huge psychological shock for Rome, wasn't it?
Massive. It proved Spartacus wasn't just a tough gladiator, he was tactically brilliant. Unconventional. It showed his followers were disciplined, resourceful, and it exposed this terrifying vulnerability in the Roman military machine.
Their standard tactics just didn't work against him.
Nope. He refused to fight by their rules. This victory, plus capturing all those Roman weapons and supplies, it shattered the illusion this was just some minor bandit problem. Rome suddenly realized this is war, and Spartacus is winning.
And news of that victory, escaping Vesuvius, routing a praetor, that must have spread like wildfire across southern...
Oh, absolutely. Suddenly, Spartacus isn't just some escaped convict. He's a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope for thousands, maybe tens of thousands, living under Roman oppression.
So people started flocking to him.
A flood. From those huge farming estates, the latifundio runaway slaves poured in, impoverished shepherds, farm laborers who'd lost their land, anyone with a grievance against Rome. They saw a chance.
A chance for freedom. Or maybe just revenge.
Probably both. And Spartacus apparently had this policy of sharing out any captured loot fairly. That would have been a huge draw, too.
So the numbers just exploded from those original 70-odd guys.
The growth was astonishing. Ancient writers throw around huge figures. Appian claims 70,000 early on, maybe even 120,000 later. Now, okay, Roman historians might have inflated those numbers.
Right, to make their eventual victory seem bigger or excuse the early defeats.
Exactly. A bit of historical spin. But even if it was, say, half that, it's still a massive, terrifying, mobile army.
And they come down off Vesuvius. What happens then?
They start rampaging through Campania, Lucania, the rich estates, the towns, cities like Nola, Nuceria, Thuria, Metapontum, they were sacked. You can imagine the Roman masters in those places faced brutal payback.
Rome must have been scrambling now. They sent another praetor.
They did. Publius Varinius. He tried to be smarter than Glaber, tried dividing his forces to corner Spartacus.
How did that work out?
Disaster, absolute disaster for Rome. Spartacus just picked off Varinius' subordinates, Furius and Cassinius, one by one. There's even a story he caught Cassinius while the guy was taking a bath.
No.
Killed him right there. Captured Verinius's lictors, his ceremonial bodyguards, a huge public humiliation for a Roman magistrate. Even grabbed Verinius's own horse. Verinius himself barely escaped with his life.
His own soldiers started deserting.
Yeah, facing this enemy who seemed unstoppable, who fought with this terrifying ferocity, Roman morale just collapsed in Verinius's forces.
So real panic in the Senate now, in the streets of Rome. How could slaves be doing this?
Exactly. Panic, disbelief, humiliation. But this army's growth, it wasn't just Spartacus's charisma or skill, though that mattered. It was fueled by the deep problems in the Republic itself.
You mean the whole system built on conquest and slavery?
Precisely. Decades of war flooded Italy with slaves. They worked in chains on massive estates, lived in misery, faced constant abuse. At the same time, small farmers were being pushed off their land by the wealthy elite. Southern Italy was just a powder keg.
And Spartacus was the match.
He was the match. He didn't create the conditions, but he ignited them. Offered freedom, revenge, a chance to take back something. It taps into this deep well of desperation.
So the rebellion looks completely unstoppable. But then, cracks start showing inside the rebel army itself.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable, isn't it? Holding together such a massive, diverse group. Thracians, Gauls, Germans, Italians, slaves, poor free men, all with different backgrounds, different ideas. It was incredibly difficult.
And the big split came over. What? Strategy. What to do next?
Seems like it. The core disagreement was about the ultimate goal. What did winning actually mean?
And Spartacus, the sources suggest, he had a specific plan.
Reportedly, yes. He wanted to march the army north, cross the Alps, and basically disband. Let everyone try and get back to their original homes, Gaul, Germany, the Balkans. For him, freedom meant getting out of Italy, away from Rome entirely.
Makes sense. Escape Roman power. But not everyone agreed.
Apparently not. Crixus, the Gallic leader, and a large chunk of the army, especially the Gauls and Germans, they wanted something else.
What? Keep fighting in Italy.
Yeah. Keep fighting, keep plundering the rich estates, maybe get more revenge. Roman writers just say they wanted loot, but it was likely more complex than that. Maybe they thought they could carve out a space within Italy, or just felt the pull of vengeance more strongly.
And this disagreement led to an actual split. The army divided.
It did. A disastrous split. Early in 72 BC. Crixus broke off with a huge contingent. Appian says 30,000, which sounds like a lot, maybe too much. Plutarch just calls them the German contingent.
And Rome took advantage.
Immediately. Near Mount Garganus, down in Apulia, one of the new consuls sent to deal with the mess. Lucius Gellius Publicola caught Crixus's separated army completely unprepared.
Consuls. These are the top guys, right? Leading proper legions now.
Yes, Rome was finally taking it seriously. 2 consuls, each with legions, and Gellius just smashed Crixus's force. Reports say 2/3 were wiped out. Crixus himself was killed.
Wow. That's a huge blow to the rebellion. How did Spartacus react?
Appian tells a really grim story. He says Spartacus captured 300 Roman soldiers and forced them to fight to the death in gladiatorial combat. As a funeral honor for Crixus.
He staged his own gladiator games.
Yeah.
With Roman prisoners. That's brutal.
It's incredibly brutal. Shows the savagery escalating on both sides, doesn't it? Spartacus mirroring the very Roman cruelty he was fighting. Plutarch kind of glosses over this bit. Maybe it didn't fit his narrative.
Yeah. So the Crixus split.
Yeah.
It really exposed a fundamental weakness, didn't it? They couldn't stay united.
Exactly. United against Rome, yes, but not united on the long-term plan. Ethnic tensions probably played a part too. Thracians versus Gauls versus Germans. Strategic disagreements. The lure of immediate plunder versus a harder path to escape. It gave Rome its first major victory against the rebel leadership.
But even after losing Crixus and thousands of fighters, Spartacus wasn't finished. Not by a long shot.
Not even close. He turns around and faces both consular armies, Gellius Publicola, who beat Crixus, and the other consul, Lentulus Claudianus, and he beats them both in separate battles, marching north through the Apennines.
He defeated 2 Roman consular armies, back to back. That's incredible.
It's astonishing. Appian even claims that after these victories, Spartacus actually considered marching on Rome itself with, 120,000 men, caused absolute panic in the city before he decided against it. Maybe he realized taking the city was impossible.
So he keeps heading north, towards the Alps.
Yes, into Cisalpine Gaul, northern Italy. Near Mutina, modern Modena, he runs into another Roman army led by the governor Gaius Cassius Longinus. And guess what?
He beat them too.
Crushed them. So at this point, the Alps are right there. Freedom is literally just over the mountains. His army could have marched out of Italy, achieved the original goal, disperse.
But they didn't. They turned around. The great U-turn. Why?
It's the million-dollar question, why turn back south? The ancient sources really struggle to give a convincing reason.
What do they suggest?
Well, Plutarch kind of blames the troops, says Spartacus wanted to cross the Alps, but his men were flushed with the victory, maybe got greedy and refused, forced him to turn south for more plunder. Seems a bit convenient, maybe let Spartacus off the hook.
Yeah, sounds a bit like shifting blame. What about Appian?
Appian just says Spartacus changed his mind about attacking Rome and decided to head south towards Thurii for the winter. Again, not very satisfying.
So what are the other possibilities? Why turn back from freedom's doorstep?
Maybe the sheer logistical nightmare of getting that huge mass of people, including women, children, old folks who had joined them over the Alps, was just too daunting, especially with winter approaching.
That makes practical sense.
Or maybe the lure of continued revenge and the riches of southern Italy was just too strong for many in the army. Perhaps Spartacus himself got caught up in it. Did his own ambitions grow? Some even speculate he was thinking about invading Sicily by then.
Trying to link up with past slave revolts there.
Possibly. Whatever the reason, turning back was a huge gamble. It raises questions about Spartacus's control over his army. Was he leading or being swept along? It suggests maybe short-term desires won out over long-term survival.
Abandoning the escape route, heading back into the heart of enemy territory. Feels like a fatal mistake in hindsight.
It really does seem that way, a fatal U-turn.
Okay, so Spartacus is heading south again. The consuls are defeated. Rome must be absolutely desperate now. What do?
They reach peak freakout mode, basically. Praetors beaten, consuls routed. This is existential. Half measures failed, so they turn to the ultimate fixer, Marcus Licinius Crassus.
The richest man in Rome, famous for his somewhat predatory business dealings, like his private fire brigade.
That's the one. Made a fortune from property speculation, often after fires, conveniently. But he also had real military experience under Sulla. He was ambitious, politically connected, and he saw Spartacus as his golden ticket.
An opportunity for military glory, to boost his political career.
Exactly. The Senate gives him special command, maybe as praetor again, and authorizes this massive army, 6 new legions, plus the remnants of the beaten consular ones. We're talking maybe 32,000 to 48,000 trained infantry, plus auxiliaries. A huge force.
But Crassus' new numbers weren't enough, right, after the earlier defeats.
He knew discipline was everything. Roman soldiers had been humiliated, even started deserting. Crassus needed to restore iron control, and he did it in the most brutal way imaginable.
Decimation.
Yeah.
Just the word sounds terrifying.
It was. After one of his legates, a guy named Mummius, disobeyed orders, attacked Spartacus, and got routed, Crassus brought back this horrifyingly archaic punishment.
How did it work?
You took the units that had disgraced themselves, they drew lots, and 1 soldier in every 10 was beaten to death by his own comrades in front of the whole army.
Beaten to death by their friends. Oh, my God.
Appian specifically notes Crassus made it crystal clear. He was now more dangerous to his own soldiers than the enemy was. It was discipline through pure terror.
That tells you everything about Crassus and the stakes.
Yeah.
Absolute authority, forged in fear. And it shows the pressure he was under to succeed where others failed.
Absolutely. It highlights the ruthlessness of the Roman elite and the psychological control underpinning their power. It wasn't just about beating Spartacus. It was about reasserting Roman dominance even over its own citizens.
So Crassus takes command, terrifies his own troops into obedience. What happens next? Does the tide turn?
It does. With Crassus leading this massive, disciplined, utterly terrified army, the Romans start winning. They inflict heavy casualties on the rebels. Spartacus is pushed further and further south, towards the very tip of Italy's boot, the Strait of Messina.
The sea, crossing to Sicily. Was he trying to escape there?
That seems to have been the plan. Cornered, he hatched this daring idea. Crossed to Sicily. It had a history of major slave uprisings. He probably hoped to reignite rebellion there, find a secure base, maybe get supplies.
How was he planning to get across?
He made a deal with Cilician pirates, paid them a hefty sum, apparently, maybe gave them gifts too, to ferry about 2,000 of his men across the strait.
Dealing with pirates. Sounds risky. Did it work?
Nope. Classic pirate move. They took the money, took the gifts, and just sailed away. Left Spartacus and his army completely stranded on the coast. Total betrayal. Some minor sources mention the rebels trying and failing to build their own rafts, too.
So he's trapped. In the Radian Peninsula, the toe of Italy. What does Crassus do?
Crassus sees his chance to finally pin him down. He undertakes this monumental feat of military engineering. He builds a wall and a deep ditch right across the narrowest part of the peninsula, the isthmus.
A wall. Like Hadrian's Wall, but in southern Italy. How long was it?
Plutarch says it was about 300 stadia, which is roughly 35 miles long, a massive line of fortifications sealing off the entire peninsula, cutting off Spartacus from supplies, from reinforcements. The hunter had finally cornered his prey.
Building something like that quickly in hostile territory.
Yeah.
That's Roman power right there, logistics engineering.
Absolutely. It was a statement. Crassus shifted from just chasing Spartacus to siegecraft, attrition, trying to grind the rebellion down. And incredibly, archaeologists might have actually found part of it.
Really? Recently?
Yeah, reports came out just this year, 2024, in Calabria, in a forest area called Dossone della Meglia. They found what looks like a 1.7-mile section ditch, rampart the whole Roman system, and nearby, broken iron weapons from that period, sword handles, curved blades, maybe saké, javelin points.
Suggesting a battle happened right there, at the wall.
Exactly. Possibly rebels attacking the fortifications. It's preliminary, but super exciting. Potentially physical proof of Crassus's wall bringing 71 BC right back to life.
Wow. That's incredible. So Spartacus is walled in, pirates betray him, winter's coming, supplies running out. This has to be the end, right?
It looked utterly hopeless. Starvation was looming, morale must have been plummeting, but Spartacus wasn't done yet. He pulled off another impossible escape.
Not again. How?
Audacity, desperation, and a conveniently timed fierce winter snowstorm.
You use the weather.
Seems like it. Under the cover of darkness, blizzard conditions, his forces made a desperate attempt to breach Crassus's wall. They focused on one section, apparently filling in part of the massive ditch.
Filling it in. With what?
Plutarch mentions earth, timber, tree branches, basically anything they could find to create a bridge across the ditch. The Stars series dramatically showed them using bodies, but that's probably not accurate. Not in the main sources, anyway.
Okay, so they bridged the ditch, then scaled the wall in a snowstorm.
Somehow, yes, they broke through the Roman lines. Another stunning display of ingenuity, determination against all odds. Just like Vesuvius, Spartacus used the environment, exploited the likelihood that Roman guards would be less vigilant in a blizzard.
It's this recurring pattern, isn't it? Rigid Roman tactics versus desperate, adaptable rebels. He just refused to play by their rules.
Exactly. Each escape chipped away at Roman confidence, added to his legend. It proved desperation could, at least temporarily, overcome superior force and engineering. Southern Italy was open to him again.
Freedom regained, momentum restored, but oh no, don't tell me there was another split.
Fatally, yes. Almost immediately after breaking through Crassus's lines, the rebel army's fragile unity shattered again.
Who split off this time?
A large faction, mainly Gauls and Germans again, led by two figures named Castus and Gannicus. Gannicus gets quite a romanticized portrayal in the Star Show, by the way.
Why did they split? Same reasons as Crixus? Jealousy, strategy, just wanting to plunder.
Probably a mix of all those things. Maybe they felt Spartacus was too cautious after the breakout, or they were just undisciplined, eager to raid on their own. Whatever the reason, it was a catastrophic mistake, right when they needed unity most.
And Crassus didn't miss a beat.
Not a chance. He was relentlessly pursuing them. He saw the division, saw Castus and Gannicus's force isolated, and attacked immediately. Wiped them out. There's one account suggesting Spartacus had tried to rescue them earlier, but they foolishly separated again later.
So this final battle against the splinter group, it was fierce.
Incredibly fierce. One source claims over 10,000 rebels were killed and only 2 of them had wounds in their backs, meaning they almost all died fighting face-to-face with the Romans.
Wow. Defiant to the end. But it weakened Spartacus massively right before the final showdown.
Critically, he lost thousands more experienced fighters. This final, fatal split really hammers home the rebellion's Achilles heel. They just couldn't maintain long-term cohesion.
The same issues that doomed Crixus, different goals, ethnic tensions, indiscipline, the maybe leadership rivalries, they just kept coming back.
Exactly. Even after 2 years of shared struggle, those centrifugal forces pulled them apart. Roman power was the ultimate enemy, sure, but the rebels' recurring fragmentation made them vulnerable, allowed Crassus to pick them off piece by piece. The dream of unity just fractured under the pressure.
So the net is really closing now. Castus and Gannicus are gone. Crassus is hot on Spartacus's heels.
Yeah.
And then politics enters the arena.
Yes, adding even more pressure. News arrives in Crassus's camp. The Senate, maybe getting nervous or just hedging their bets, has recalled Pompey the Great from Spain, where he just won a victory, and Marcus Lucullus from the east.
More famous generals coming to finish the job. Crassus must have been furious.
Absolutely livid. He'd done the hard work and rebuilt Roman morale, cornered Spartacus multiple times. And now his rivals, especially the hugely popular Pompey, might swoop in and steal the glory, the credit, the triumph parade back in Rome, Crassus suddenly becomes desperate for a final decisive battle. Now.
And Spartacus. Did he sense the end was near?
He must have, maybe hearing about Pompey arriving or Lucullus landing down at Brundisium, cutting off any sea escape route. He knew his options were running out. Accian says Spartacus actually tried to negotiate with Crassus at this point.
Really? Tried to make a deal.
Yeah, but Crassus, smelling total victory and probably wanting undisputed credit, scornfully refused. No deals.
There was one last rebel victory, though, wasn't there?
Yeah.
A minor one.
Yes. Near Petelia in Calabria, Spartacus managed to ambush and defeat a Roman vanguard force. But it almost backfired. His own men, maybe overconfident after that small win, or maybe just exhausted, desperate for an end one way or another, they demanded a final battle. They refused to retreat any further.
They forced his hand.
It seems that way. The final showdown was set, likely near the Silurus River in Lucania, the modern Seal River, sometime in the spring of 71 BC.
And this is where Spartacus makes that dramatic gesture with his horse.
Exactly. Right before the battle, in front of his whole army, he called for his horse and killed it, reportedly saying something like, "If I win, I'll have plenty of the enemy's horses. If I lose, I won't need one."
Wow. That's a statement? No retreat, victory, or death.
Absolutely. Sets the tone for a brutal final stand. And the battle itself was ferocious. Bloody. Spartacus fought right at the front, on foot.
Did he really try to reach Crassus personally?
The accounts say he did. Slashed his way through the Roman ranks trying to get to the commander. He didn't make it, but he apparently cut down 2 Roman centurions in the attempt.
He was wounded.
Appian says he took a spear thrust to the thigh, sank to one knee but kept fighting, shield up, defending himself, surrounded by his men who were trying to protect him.
But eventually,
As his lines broke, he was surrounded, overwhelmed, and cut down. His army was annihilated. Roman losses were still significant, though, maybe 1,000 men, which shows how hard the rebels fought. But rebel deaths were uncountable. Some estimate up to 100,000 died over the whole war.
And Spartacus's body?
Never identified, never recovered, probably mangled beyond recognition in the chaos of that final slaughter.
But the way he died, even in the Roman accounts, killing his horse, fighting at the front, seeking the enemy commander, going down, fighting while wounded, that became part of the legend, didn't it?
Hugely important. It created this image of extraordinary courage, defiance to the very last breath. It transformed a military defeat into a kind of heroic martyrdom. That narrative of a good death, fighting valiantly against impossible odds, resonated far more than the tactical failure. It's a huge part of why his myth endures.
So Crassus wins. Finally. But the story isn't quite over. There's the political fallout and the aftermath, the really grim part.
Yeah. Right. Crassus had won the battle, but the glory-grabbing had already started. Pompey arrived with his legions from Spain just in time to...
Up.
Exactly. Pompey's forces intercepted and killed several thousand fleeing rebels, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 who had escaped the main battle.
And Pompey took the credit.
Oh, he absolutely tried to. He wrote this letter back to the Senate basically saying, "Yeah, Crassus beat some slaves in a battle, but I truly ended the war by destroying its roots." Ripped out the problem entirely, he claimed.
Crassus must have been incandescent with rage.
You can imagine. They both ended up getting elected consuls for the next year, 70 BC, partly due to the popularity gained from ending the revolt. But Pompey got the grander prize, a full military triumph parade through Rome. Crassus only got a lesser honor, an ovation. It cemented their bitter rivalry for years.
But before all that political maneuvering, Crassus enacted his own victory statement. His final act of vengeance.
His terrifying vengeance on the captured survivors, about 6,000 enslaved people taken prisoner after the final battle.
What did you do with them?
He ordered them all crucified, all 6,000 of them, lined up along the Via Appia, the main highway leading south from Rome towards Capua, where the revolt began.
Crucified along the road. For how far?
The road runs about 130 miles between Rome and Capua, 6,000 crosses. That means a crucified body roughly every 100 feet or so. For miles and miles. Some even speculate Crassus deliberately chose 6,000 to outdo Pompey's claim of killing 5,000.
That's unimaginable. Psychological warfare on a horrifying scale.
Absolutely. Crucifixion was already a shameful, agonizing death, usually reserved for slaves and the lowest criminals. To do it to thousands, lining Rome's busiest highway. It turned the landscape itself into this grotesque monument of terror. For weeks, maybe months.
The smell, the suffering, just a constant, unavoidable reminder.
A constant reminder of the price of defiance. It was a deliberate, horrific message burned into the collective memory. This is what happens when you challenge Rome. It replaced the fear of Spartacus with an even greater, state-sanctioned fear of Roman retribution. It underlines the sheer trauma the revolt caused Rome and the savage lengths they would go to ensure it never, ever happened again.
So there you have it, the insane, brutal, improbable story of Spartacus, a Thracian gladiator who shook an empire to its core.
He lost the war. In the end, spectacularly, horrifically. His body vanished. His followers were nailed to crosses. By any conventional measure, he failed.
But in losing that way, fighting to the end, he gained this totally different kind of immortality, didn't he? His ghost just haunts history, the ultimate symbol of the rebel.
Absolutely. His story holds up this brutal mirror. It reflects incredible courage, but also unimaginable cruelty, desperation, Roman power, and just our endless fascination with those who dare to fight against impossible odds.
He's still an enigma, isn't he? Was he a hero, a
Yeah.
villain, a brilliant strategist, just a desperate bandit, a freedom fighter?
Maybe all of the above. Depends on who you ask, which source you read, what lens you look through. That complexity is part of his enduring power.
And nearly 2,000 years later, that name Spartacus, it still sparks something fierce, doesn't it? Still resonates.
It really does.
Think your life gets crazy? Wait until you hear who we're digging up next time on Lifespan.